Welcome to the Sega Network podcast. I'm your host, Hui-chin. Today, we connect with Chris Emmott, managing partner at EBG International, a Chilean firm dedicated to life-centered financial planning for globally mobile clients. Chris brings decades of experience advising professionals through major transitions across Europe and Latin America. In this episode, he shares his journey from the UK financial services to building a cross-border practice, the human side of planning, and why empathy and structure matter in global advice. This is a must listen for anyone curious about the art and science of planning across borders. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Chris Emmott. Hello. Welcome to the Cigar Network podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well.
Just before we started, I just learned that Chris is now in South Africa. He's being on 18 months, 11 months out of the 18 months digital nomad traveling with his family. So thank you for, taking the time out of your busy traveling schedule. But I would like to start with just learning, a little bit about your background. Even though we've been working together in the last few years, I feel like I've never really heard you describe, how you got into financial advising and specifically cross-border, financial planning. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Okay. Well, I guess the financial services side of it started when I was about 18. So growing up, a lot of the friends I grew up with in the UK, you have sort of one set of school goes to GCSEs, or it did at those days. Then you have 2 years of sort of post-high school, pre-university. And then after that, university. A lot of my friends didn't even go for the middle bit. They just went straight into sort of vocational training and sort of manual trades and that kind of thing. I went to college, well, what we call college, the pre-university, to keep my mum happy as much as anything. Studied classics, history, not much career span in those. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I didn't bother with university. I just had a look for job options, and trainee financial advisor in my hometown came up. So I lived just north of London on the London suburbs. And that was that really. So worked in the UK for a small financial advisory company for a little while, then got poached by one of the big mutual offices back then, a company called Standard Life. In sort of like the mid-90s, that was the financial services provider of note in the UK. Couple of years there, then jumped across to Scottish Equitable, which is now Aegon. And all of this was on the provider side. Financial advisory, small company, financial advice, then about 6 or 7 years on the provider side. So being the rep to a big panel of financial advice companies, sort of representing the life office. And then from there, I decided to cross over the fence back into financial advice. There was a boutique firm not far away from me that was looking to get involved in some fairly sort of technical pensions opportunities. And I trained that company on technical pensions. It was a lot of what I did back in that time. So I worked for them for a few years, then got offered a job at Barclays Wealth, who just bought a large stockbroking firm and were looking to break into the sort of like the personal financial advice market. All sounded very good. Took the job, found out it was essentially a sales job. Classic bank. There's 6 people. There's some high-end bankers over here. They're incentivized to give you a lead, and then the corporate bankers, they're meant to introduce you to a business that might need key person cover or a pension scheme, and they're all being chased around by spreadsheets for how many referrals did you pass over, and then you get the chase. I don't know, let's say the fund of the month was the Aberdeen Technology Fund. They've sent you off to see a bunch of elderly people who had vast amount of money sitting in their building societies or savings accounts because they're incredibly risk averse. And I'm being asked why haven't I sold them a load of technology fund. Everything about it was wrong. So at the time, they had to offer me quite a nice salary guarantee for me to join them. So I knew I had a year without any pressure. I didn't have to be recommending things I didn't believe in. So I took some time to step back and look at the industry and see, is there something else I'd like to do? Is there another opportunity out there that I find interesting? And there wasn't really much at the time. So we're sort of mid-2000s now. I was sort of approaching my 30s. I was in a long-term relationship, which was either going to sort of finish or go to marriage. It was like that kind of make or break point. And I was quite, I had quite itchy feet. So in the end, I split up with my girlfriend. Like we went our own separate ways. Strapped on a rucksack, flew to Delhi, and then about 6 months later ended up in Chile. I was meant to be in Chile for 2 days originally, and just left in December after nearly 20 years with a wife and daughter in tow. So when I got to Chile, I didn't speak Spanish. So trying to look for a job in what I do was essentially pointless, or felt pointless. So I became an English teacher. I did my TEFL qualifications, and I was training professionals in business English. But I'm a keen cricketer, so I used to play cricket at the weekends. It was quite an expat heavy thing there. And the typical, after a game, you have a beer and a chat with the other players, and they asked me what I did. So I explained what my career was, and they said, "Oh, have you spoken to this firm and that firm?" There's 2 of these cross-border financial services firms operating out of Santiago. So I went to meet with them both. One was terrifying. Just a naked, commission-hungry, aggressive sales office that didn't really seem to understand even what it was they were selling. And the other seemed a lot more professional, small team, got on with the owners well. It was a good fit for everybody. They got a qualified financial planner turning up wanting to work, which, doesn't happen in Santiago every day. And I got a chance to continue my career. So I started with them. After a couple of years, they made me a partner, a bit of a minor equity stake. And then they started growing. And unfortunately, they kind of fell into the trap that a lot of other cross-border firms, certainly the British origin ones, had fallen into, which was a bit of greed. Standards started slipping. They're starting to employ any Tom, Dick, and Harry who could, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a job almost there. It was getting a bit silly, completely against what I believe in. So I moved to Peru to set up the Peru office for them, where I could control everything my own way. And then my wife got pregnant. So we came back to Chile for the birth of my daughter. She was very sick when we were a kid, and that basically forced my hand. I thought, I can't sit back knowing that there's a lot wrong with the company I'm associated with. Even if I didn't have any ethical issues with it, I just don't think from a business sense point of view, it was a wise way to run a company. There'd be no point in crying over spilt milk a couple of years later when all my predictions came true and I was just left there with nothing. A colleague of mine from that company and we set up EBG nearly 10 years ago, and been going from strength to strength ever since. That's the career summary, I'd say.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm curious. Obviously, you started from, I noticed you used the word financial services, and it's very particular for people who came into the industry working for, either on the sales side or on, provider side, compared to people who, come in just like, we're working with, wealth management or working with, just financial planning only, right? It's a very different mindset. And then you're going to kind of like a expat focused environment where that probably also still exists, or maybe even more so. So I'm kind of curious, like how do you see the differences, like when you're transitioning from doing just UK to, doing expat or cross-border, what are some of the challenges to do it right, in the way you think is right?
Yeah, I think it's the same challenge a lot of people face anywhere in the profession in the world when we talk about that sort of definition of role and what it is that you prioritize. I think the cross-border marketplace, and I'm looking at this slightly more from the traditional UK life office lens, A lot of the providers that support the industry come out of old UK Life offices, their Isle of Man distribution, and then European firms similar. So it kind of, a lot of firms just have the focus on the client's money, not the client's life, which is the antithesis of great financial planning, as far as I'm concerned. I don't like it when advisors lead with a tax strategy or a product solution, because that's what they can control, as opposed to a client's life. And I think it's much the same in, I think, most countries. The industry is controlled by large vested interests, companies that, need assets under management, need products sold. So they kind of try and force the value of the conversation to that transactional part around the money, which I really don't like. And I'd say I do quite a lot of work with UK advisors where they have clients that are leaving the UK, moving overseas. And the section of that market I work with are very much life-centered financial planning. Client's life first, product eventually, or tax wrapper eventually, once we've worked out all the important stuff. So I get to still work on that basis internationally. But the foreign side of it is a long way behind. Although there's probably a huge section of that UK market, probably a huge section of the US RIA market is still there, lead with the product, not with the plan, whereas we're completely the opposite way around. And that's quite a hard thing to do in a market that's traditionally been very commission heavy and very sort of eat what you kill in its essence. I think EBG, my firm, is the only firm I know, and I'm not saying we are the only firm, but I think the only firm that I know well in this sort of cross-border space that's born out of a more sort of British origin story as opposed to the US origin. And we're all our staff salary, as opposed to sort of variable remuneration, heavy commission components of what they earn. So long story short, yeah, I think the big challenge is to forge a career there where you're able to put financial planning first.
So I guess I guess when you started with EBG, that's in Chile, and then you went to Peru, what are some of the things that you've learned that's unique? I guess you work with expats at British centers, so probably a lot of English speaking expats in Latin America. So what are some of the challenges they face, and what are some of the things that you were able to help them with?
Yeah, so being based in Chile, I didn't really do a huge amount of work with Brits for certain, and Americans were almost seen as kryptonite as well, as you know. As soon as the IRS comes into a conversation, everybody panics a little bit. So we didn't really do a huge amount of that. With the Brits, because I was a technical pensions guy, when I was first there, we put on a webinar with the British Chamber of Commerce and the First Minister of Guernsey around UK pensions and the benefits or not to transferring them. So we went through that, and I actually only recommend about 15 people ask us to do it for them, and I only agreed to do 2 or 3 and put the rest back because they were bad for business. They were not a sensible thing to be done. But over the years since, I've bumped into some of those people who've asked me for help rectifying a situation where they went and found somebody to do it for them anyway. So one of the more sort of famous international brands that are known for such commission hungry tactics had got hold of them, and then I had to fix them anyway. In terms of British, like English speaking, we dealt with a lot of Australians. Chile's a very heavy, Peru too, very heavy mining country. And that's also true of Australia. So we used to get quite a lot of executives coming over for your big household name mining companies or even some junior exploration. But a lot of what we did was really helping Latin American executives. And where I found a good niche was sort of young and very capable people, probably coming to us in their mid-late 30s, midway through the career progression, not in a corner office yet, but on that trajectory. Quite often where they were the first person in their family to reach those sorts of heights, maybe the first to have gone to university, and really taking, like really considered people that wanted to be able to build a true financial plan to take their family forward. And that was quite rewarding. We dealt with a lot of people in household name companies and helped them just build a big overall financial plan. And my way of looking at this is there's 2 times in your life when you really need a financial planner. The first is when you realize you're a financial adult and, Some people are just incredibly structured and, they're 21 and they're already thinking about decades into the future. Others, they're touching 50 before they get it. Oh, hang on. I've got 3 kids, a mortgage. I've got to retire one day, whatever retirement might mean. I need this organized. So we used to capture a lot of the more thoughtful people in that circumstance. And, while everybody's different, the typical profile of that would be a fair amount of financial education, trying to unlearn the things that the industry has taught them, the preconceived expectations that they have, giving them a really good sort of structured financial model, good sort of cash flow modeling. Obviously, if you're 38, then it's just directional, right? And any financial plan's out of date the minute you finish creating it. But giving people a sort of a set structure to work to, helping them understand the need for insurance, how to invest sensibly, how to view risk versus volatility, and them not being the same thing, how to harness share awards and bonuses, and quite a lot of hard currency work as well. So if you're dealing with a Colombian, a Venezuelan, an Ecuadorian who's, I don't know, let's say working at Google in South America, their interest is also greatly in US dollars and external solutions. So we did a lot of that work. The other time when I think you really need a good financial planner is on a major transition. And the classic for that is the sort of at retirement, whatever that may mean. I don't really like the word retirement. I'm more financial independence kind of guy, but where you can make some really expensive mistakes. So get somebody set up correctly. And if you've done your job properly, it's then just every year checking in, monitoring, picking up on, if something changes with you, let us know and we'll see if it changes the plan. And yeah, that big transition. So we're doing a lot more of that work now than we used to. I mean, we've always done both, but because we're now working predominantly on referral from UK and to a lesser degree US financial planners, it's quite often people that are moving at retirement. They've decided that their third chapter is going to be somewhere different from where they spent the first chunk of their life. That's where having the cross-border knowledge is vital. And we still love working with the future leaders, as I think you could frame them. So we do quite a lot of work now with less in Latin America as a start point, but those clients we took on are now dotted around the world. So we probably see people being moved to Switzerland quite often, moved up to the States quite often, and dotted all over. So sort of helping guide them through the transitions and what they mean. Again, I don't like it when people lead with tax strategies and investment solutions to human problems, and building a financial plan is a human thing. I think it's at least as much art as it is science. So a lot of our work in the cross-border space is helping people understand the challenges that they're going to find as well as the opportunities, and making sure they're prepared for that. The strain it can put on a relationship, on a family, making a big transition when you're not used to it into a place that nobody understands. Is one partner going to give up a career to follow the other one's promotion? All of these sorts of things are sort of additional considerations that I don't think domestic planners have to sort of view in the same way.
Do you find that there is actually more need for cross-border just because of the location? Because for people who are being in higher paying jobs or positions, they're more likely that they will want to have some opportunities abroad versus maybe a person in similar situation in the US and UK doesn't have to consider those opportunities abroad.
Yeah, so in that sense, so I guess a lot of our traditional, so let's call them C-suite clients. So they normally come to us just below hitting that, or just starting there. A lot of them came to us from Latin America, and rightly or wrongly, that's not where head offices are. That's not where the progression is. That's not where the opportunities are. Yeah, if you've got somebody that's reached the top of where they're going to get to in the Sao Paulo office, the next jump up is country manager, let's say, and there's no pathway there, and they're going to be going to Geneva for a few years for the opportunity. So That's almost more straightforward from even if this costs me in tax, I'm going to do it anyway
Mm-hmm.
because it's my career
Mm-hmm.
progression. So let's make this as streamlined
Mm-hmm.
as possible
Mm-hmm.
and tell me the things I need to know
Mm-hmm.
about that new country, stop me putting my foot in a massive hole, which can
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows, well, not everybody knows the rules of their own country, but people likely know the rules of their home country. From the
Mm-hmm.
States, you understand what a 401k is, you can have an IRA, and what these mean.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that other countries don't have any
Mm-hmm.
recognition of that potentially, or the things they do want you to use domestically could cause you problems back home. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the States, I think a lot of the SIGA members are more US based than I am. So you've obviously got the whole PFIC issue for US people, and it doesn't matter how attractive this option might be in the country
Mm-hmm.
you're in now, Mr. Client.
Mm-hmm.
When you go home, it's going to cause
Mm-hmm.
problems. So then
Mm-hmm.
it's tax efficiency versus outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, there's always that sort of hand holding. The key thing for us is to never let a minor tax perk or investment opportunity derail a bigger plan. If there's
Mm-hmm.
something that we can define, well, do you need that? Because here's the plan. This is what we know we're aiming to achieve. This is how we know we're going to get there. Is there any sense in sort of trying to chase this extra little bit of fire, going into this opportunity that could cause you tax headaches down the line, could be unwound, or just doesn't make it? Why do you want to lock in money into a Turkish lira based investment
Yeah.
where you're a Brazilian who plans to retire in Boston? You know,
Mm-hmm.
why are we doing that? So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
keeping people away from shiny things
Mm-hmm.
is just as important as telling them what's optimal.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you mentioned, in a sense, in the clients in this space, coming out of being executives from Latin American country, they can really go anywhere, right? And they actually have opportunities and also access to things that maybe is not good for them, but it is, it could be good or not, but then you just have to constantly be very vigilant about, these different
Yeah.
products and systems.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of a good financial planner's role is a shield, a scam
Mm,
detector, a bright, shiny idea deflector.
mhm,
Why do you need this? This is going to derail the bigger plan if it goes wrong. If it goes right, happy days. But we don't need it. And if it doesn't go right, and with 30 years of history as my guide, these things often don't
mhm,
work out.
mhm, mhm,
Typically shiny things, they're working now to get you interested.
mhm,
Do you want to do the extra 5 years work to sort of make back the money? Maybe not. I'd say the other end of that sort of the two segments that we feel are vital times to receiving advice is that sort of big transition towards retirement. There we really need good cross-border advice. A lot of the younger career stage stuff, it's almost tax-led a lot of the time. So long as the plan's good, you're going anywhere, you're going to get paid what they're going to pay you. And let's say I've got a client who's just moved to the States. He's going to get the 401k, whether it's any use to him down the line or not. It's just going to happen. The finances have to be subservient to the life goal.
mhm,
The career path is a major part of
mhm,
what they want to achieve in life. When it comes to people that are sort of making that transition, let's say Americans returning to Portugal, we see quite a lot of Brits going to Spain. Had this one just last week, being referred to a British couple moving to Spain, and the advisor was making all sorts of assumptions. A nice guy, genuine, good quality, sort of CFP level, chartered financial planner, planning led, not product led, great guy. But he'd made a lot of assumptions about what would happen in Spain because he was basing it on his understanding of the UK system. He had cash flow models with tax-free income coming from ISA portfolios,
mhm,
which is our UK sort of tax-defended wrapper.
mhm,
Get 20,000 a year to go into it, no tax on growth, no tax on withdrawal. He'd assumed that in the UK you get a 25% lump of your pension that you can draw as cash without any tax. Just assumed it'd be respected in Spain. It's not. if we can access that, let's access it now before they so we got in time. If they hadn't been referred to us and they'd just carried on as planned, they'd have been in a massively suboptimal position. And again, with big moves like that, there's opportunity. People don't know what they don't know. So we had one recently, couples about to move to France without getting certain bits of paperwork in place and following a process which would allow them to sort of release their UK pension in its entirety for like 9-10% tax, and then get the money into a vehicle which would be really French efficient, both from an inheritance point of view and a tax point of view, from drawing much better than drawing from a UK pension. Now, the advisor whose clients that was moving obviously has no idea that that's an option. Why would you, if you've never dealt with France before? So I think at that stage, the need for good cross-border planning is essential, because at that stage, they're big, expensive mistakes. We're talking like 6-figure mistakes, potentially, if you don't 7 figures, if you're really wealthy. Yeah, so that's where I'd like to see more cooperation. I love what you've done with SIGA, because there's countries I don't know enough. Like if I get a client that's moving to the States with a really complex estate planning need. So, for example, a good client of mine is just in the process of moving from Mexico to the US. Senior guy, household name tech company. I've spoken to 2 SIGA members to help me highlight the things I don't know. So I can highlight them to him and say, right, you need to speak to your company transition person about this sort of $4 million worth of unvested stock, which is going to change his perspective pretty quick. So I spoke to Sefa, who's, I think, your colleague around that. She's excellent on RSUs. She knows the US inside out. And I spoke to a chap called Raul Rodriguez, who's another member of SIGA, about the whole Mexican US transition. Having that ability to work in partnership with other advisors is massive.
Yeah.
So we do that for UK advisors, but even when that referral comes to us, we might work with another advisor. We'll always bring in external tax advisors to sign off points that we're making from a tax point of view. What I find frustrating is how difficult it is for regulators to create a playing field where we are able to align in the client's best interest, but within their regulatory frameworks. That is very frustrating. I have a UK license, I have an EU license, I'm SEC authorized, but I can't easily advise somebody moving from the UK to Spain, let's say, on the right paperwork and who signs this and are we allowed to work together? Does it have to be separate, even though it's the same person? It's got all the right authorization. I feel we shoot ourselves in the foot as a profession there. But yeah, I'm going to try not to go on a rant on that.
No, you were just pre-answering my question, which I haven't asked. Like knowing that the type of clients you serve are really just, they're pretty mobile. And even in retirement, like a lot of different countries, they might be mobile during their productive years, like income earning years, but they're like, once retire, I'm back to my home. But I can see you work with a lot of people who's just mobile throughout their lives, maybe including their children, grandchildren. So obviously the major question is, how do you, as people move to a place you may not have the knowledge of, and how do you come up with the knowledge to help guide clients the correct way? You mentioned one thing is obviously finding the experts, having a network of people. What are some of the other things you've done that has helped you through this journey of working with people from so many different scenarios?
Yeah, I think that the most dangerous thing you can say in our profession is, I'll give it a go. You need to know when you don't know something, because otherwise you can be causing foreseeable harm. If you're the person that doesn't know what they don't know, and you're seen as the voice of knowledge for a client, then you really are playing with fire there. And I don't think that's remotely appropriate. The good thing is, we're quite a long time in this industry, so we've built up really good networks, and I've got quite a filter for who I'd want to talk to and who I wouldn't. So I think it's very important for us to build that up. Inside Europe, we're pretty comfortable, the major countries. So everybody in the business speaks either Spanish or Portuguese as well as English at a native or near native level. So
Mhm.
Spain and Portugal have been really obvious for us. All the advisors are UK qualified, so UK
Mhm.
related issues is very straightforward. France, we spent a lot of time getting to know, and we work with tax advisors in France on the ground. Same sort of thing with Switzerland. So these are sort of core markets. The US, we do a lot of work with on a non-overly technical basis. So let's say somebody's got an old 401k left in the States. They're now in Europe or they're in the UK, and they want that being brought into their bigger planning, then we can sort
Mhm.
of roll that over to us. We can put that on the board when we're looking at the broader picture. This client
Mhm.
of mine is going to move to the States for a while. We'll ensure that he's in a US compliant brokerage account. But the day he comes to me and says, right, I'm staying here forever and I need a comprehensive estate plan, that's when I reach out to somebody in the network. Middle East, we do a reasonable amount of work, and we've got access to DFC license for Dubai, for example. It's not somewhere we've really wanted to get involved in, but there's so many fast and loose firms out there harassing people
Mhm.
non-stop. If you're a senior guy at ABC Limited and you're getting 3 calls a
Mhm.
week from chippy
Mhm.
sales people,
Mhm.
and then you complain to one of our clients at the weekend, God, this is a nightmare, and they say you should speak to Chris, then obviously they
Mhm.
want to speak to the person that's not chasing them and comes with social proof. So we do a bit of work there.
Mhm.
Once we get into other sort of heavily regulated, complex jurisdictions, then it just turns into a referral on. So, for
Mhm.
example, Singapore.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Hello.
So, for example, Singapore, as part of this, yeah, my screen says trying to reconnect, but I can see and hear you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. So countries like Singapore, for example, quite well regulated, quite sophisticated markets. Again, SIGA member Anne Marie is based in Singapore. So when I was there earlier this year, went and met with her team, visited the offices, spoke to the people there. So now I know that if somebody comes to me with I'm going to be moving to Singapore, I've got complex planning needs, I can refer. Similar sort of story in Australia, New Zealand. We've got good firms over there that we can bring in, and we can trust to do a good job for our clients. So I think having that network is
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
having the mindset that you can't do everything is also very important.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I am going to, tackle a bit to asking you about your great journey that you're you're on right now. We've talked to advisors before where cross-border advisors, they don't necessarily are living the global transitions themselves. They may be experts in working with expats from certain countries that are moving around, they're staying put, but obviously they're advisors who personally have the experience of being in different countries. And yeah, so tell us a little bit about, you know, how your work inform your personal transitions or the other way around.
Yeah, so interestingly, I was always planning to be on a round the world trip. So my first round the world trip ended up in Chile, married, eventually child who's it's her 10th birthday today, actually.
Happy birthday.
I will pass that on, thank you. Um, but we knew we wanted to do something else. We'd always fancied the idea of living overseas. Partly why I took this opportunity to go Peru back in the day. It was mainly around being able to control the ethics of what I was doing every day, but also a bit of an adventure. So we'd planned a 6-month sabbatical when we turned 45, which was a couple of years ago. Um, but from where EBG as a business was, it wasn't the right time to fully step away. So my business partner relocated to Barcelona. So he was able to take 3 or 4 months broadly out, more sabbaticalish. And I could sort of hold that together, but I don't think it'd be right to him or the company for me to go for 6 months where we were. So we've been through a few evolutions as a business, the way that we run things, our processes, our staffing methodology. So we had our EBG 2.0 conference in Madrid in November 23, maybe. And it was clear that we were on a journey. So I can't just step away. I do a lot of the front of house side of the business, the relationships with other introducers. I often have the role of taking that first call with a potential client just to make sure, look, can we add outsized value against fees here? Like, are we the right person for you? Are you the right person for us? Do you seem like a nice person? Do you seem engaged? So we can't sort of let that function disappear. And also mentoring and training our junior advisors. We've got two lovely young women who have, got their exams and they're coming through and they're progressing. So to sort of like leave them to figure it out for themselves for a while didn't feel right either. So instead of shunning the dreams, we extended the timeline and I'm working throughout. So my daughter's on like a cut down UK curriculum online. So English, maths, science, bit of STEM, a little bit of art. And I'm working probably 80% of my usual capacity, probably about 120% of a regular employed person's capacity. As you know, when your name above the door never stops, does it? You've got to be responsive and doing things. And yeah, it's a challenge, but the timing is right to do this now. The idea is we'll finish when my daughter's due to start high school. So we're going to be doing that in Spain. The plan is to live in Valencia. So she can transition into high school at an age where everybody's making this transition. So she's not going to stand out as the new girl as much. And also having advised so many senior people who have been global in their career and haven't really had full control over where they go and when. I mean, you can always say no and quit, right? Go and work for somebody else. But if you're executive track for ABC Limited and they say, right, you're going to Chile for 3 years or you're going to Frankfurt for 3 years, then you kind of have to say yes. And a common thread, I think I've said before, is far more for me about the personal, the human side than the money side. I think understanding that we can put the right numbers in a calculator at table stakes, we have to be able to do that. The skill is the human side. So we have these kind of personal conversations regularly. And the general vibe of regret of moving kids around during those high school years, the key learning years, is one that comes through quite often, even if it's not abundantly clear. It's right there below the surface of the words that people are using. And we're quite lucky in the sense we've got one kid, so we don't have to worry about which is the right time, who do we disrupt. So yeah, it made sense, because if we don't do it now, the next time she want to travel with us, we're not going to pull her out of schooling when it's high school. And, when she's in her late 20s, she'll probably want to travel with us again. But I'm under no illusion we're heading into the teenage year. It's nice to go now with a look of wonder on her face and sort of compliance and smiles, as opposed to staring at a phone all day. So yeah, it's been fun, if not a little bit challenging.
And I just think it's very cool that as advisor, you're also kind of living the possibility. I think a lot of times we do life planning and clients say, oh, I would like to do this, but we don't have a lot of choices, things like that. And, as their advisor, you're like actively living out those choices. So I think that is very cool.
Yeah, I think you have to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And at times I'm sensitive to the fact that it almost looks like I'm having a good time while they're at work, sort of thing. Like I'm quite self-conscious of that. But I think it is right. If you're going to preach to people that life's not a dress rehearsal, as I say that a lot to people. Why? Like, I'll do it one day. That grinds my gears a little bit. If there's a good reason that you're putting something off, then fine. Absolutely. Obviously, your life, your choices. But if it's just a sort of a bit of a fear of doing something, no, I try and encourage my clients to live their best life, and sometimes, our job isn't telling people what they want to hear. It's sometimes what they need to hear. That is, don't let this pass you by. You can afford to do this. You can catch up later, whatever it is. And I think that gives us value than shaving a couple of points off on a tax calculation or getting a bit of alpha from an investment portfolio.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I have two things I'm interested in hearing. One is you mentioned EBG 2.0, and maybe it's already heading into 3.0. And you said yourself you're moving to Spain, your partner had moved, and is EBG still based in Latin America? Are you expanding? Are you locating in different places?
Well, EBG International SPA is a Chilean company. So the original
Mm.
business is still there. We're actually saying goodbye to our last Latin American based employee next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's lovely. She comes from outside the industry. She's come on leaps and bounds. She's just about to do a Series 65 because we're going to have her more focused on the US side of things. But a few personal things have come up for her where she needs to sort of step away from work for a while to deal with a few things. So she's got our full backing. But when she goes, we won't have anybody based in,
Mm.
none of our permanent staff based in South America
Mm.
anyway. A lot of our
Mm.
in-sourced people are still there.
Mm. Mm.
So we probably will pivot a little bit more away from LATAM. We'll always be asked to get involved. We're always going to get referrals in that part of the world.
Mm.
We'll always keep our knowledge up. But I think as we move forward, it's going to be more of a European centre.
Mm.
So
Mm.
all of our staff, all of our permanent staff are going to be in
Mm.
Spain or Portugal
Mm.
as it stands. And
Mm.
that's good from a time zone perspective, from a control perspective, for getting together more
Mhm.
often. So we get together for a conference every year. We're going to be in Budapest first week of January. It's a lot easier to do that when everybody's nearby. And in terms of our core markets as well, it's like I mentioned to you before, it's don't try and do too much. If we can really sort of try and align any of our proactive attempts more towards a couple of core markets, then I think that's great. We'll still be able to do out of those core market stuff where relevant, where we feel we're well placed, where we feel we can do a good job, and where the clients, come from a really highly regarded referral source. But I think that will allow us to have a bit more focus. So the core markets for us at the moment are the US, UK, France, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, but only where there's a cross-border element. So
Mhm.
if I'm looking at this couple that I just mentioned, they're moving to Spain, if they refer me to their next door neighbour back in the UK who's got no intention to leave, I will politely decline to take on that client. And the couple that
Mhm.
they were referred to me by an advisor
Mhm.
from their area who they worked with before. Remember, this is the right way to do that. So that's more our focus. We do take other stuff on as
Mhm.
needed,
Mhm.
especially for me where I can see foreseeable harm coming if we don't.
Mhm.
If we don't help that person, they're going to go blundering around looking for somebody who, I say somebody who will take them on. Whether or not they'll help
Mhm.
them or not is
Mhm.
questionable. So
Mhm.
that's probably going to be the focus moving forwards. We're not looking to grow the team too aggressively in the next couple of
Mhm.
years, but I think another little bit of growth in a couple of years' time is probably going to be inevitable.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't want to be sort of running around managing 20, 30 people. I think if we can keep it with about 10 full-time people, that's probably where I'd like to.
Yeah. I love that your life evolves and your business evolves with you, and not even just you, the entire team, which is quite interesting. But I don't know how much speaks to, the status of the world where people are all kind of changing borders or changing where they are, their
Right.
locations. But I think, we adapt, humans adapt, to the changing, circumstances. So as we close, I like to ask this question because I'm sure all of us get asked these questions a lot. So I would like to put it on record. For people who are interested in getting into cross-border, whether they're new, new advisor, or they've been doing this for a long time, but they really want to add this, under their belts, what are the one advice you would give them?
So are we looking at somebody who, let's say, is already in the profession but has been domestic, or somebody straight out of college?
Yeah, could be either one.
Okay. I think somebody coming straight out of college, stand out and find out who the exceptional people are in the industry. If you come to somebody like you or to me and you've made an effort to stand out, you're clearly bright, you're clearly exceptional, then we know each other quite a lot. If there's nothing that's open for us right now, then we can sort of circulate details amongst our networks and you might be able to find somebody there. and be willing to start from the beginning. Don't think you're going to be going into sort of board meetings and whatever it is on day one. You've got to learn every step of the way. Just listen to interesting book, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. I don't know if you've come across that. That's a good listen, where they say everybody starts as a sort of kitchen runner, regardless of if they're coming in from a Michelin restaurant. You start there, you learn how to do every part of the role. And don't try and rush. Build it sensibly, and you've got foundations to fall back on in the future. I think for somebody coming from a domestic environment that already knows financial planning, really make sure you're up on your financial planning chops, because that part of the job, 90% the same, regardless of where somebody is, because it's people. We manage the owners of money. We don't manage money. Money's straightforward. We manage the owners of money. So make sure you're really hot on your personal skills, your human empathy, your understanding of that sort of lifestyle part of the financial planning. Drift into some kinder stuff, like learn this element, because that is where the real strength lies. And then when it comes to picking up technical skills, start with your knowledge base and one other country, let's say. So if you're coming from the US, start with the US and pick somewhere where there's a reasonable amount of flowing traffic and you can learn that system quite quickly, whether it's like Mexico or Canada from the US, I don't know, Portugal. Don't try and bite off too much, and then slowly build your confidence and find a good network of trusted professionals. So really focus in on the human side of the job. I mean, you've got no right talking to people about their money until you know what they want from life and how they got to where they've got to. So the whole cross-border piece comes after that anyway. Do a great job from the outset. You'll soon understand how technical their needs may be. And if you've got a good network of trusted sort of tax advisors, tax lawyers, that sort of thing, then they can help you with the other piece. And whatever you do, don't think you can ask ChatGPT to give you a solid answer to a technical question and think that's your way of getting through. Tempting, but every time I ask it something that's technical, I know a few things in life that I'll debate anybody on. Financial planning, cricket, that's about it. Pretty good on global travel. Every time I ask it a question about something I know, it's normally at least 20% wrong. Sometimes it's completely wrong. So be really careful about getting AI to try and carry your lunch for you. Be honest about what you don't know. Lock in on the human side. The technicalities are easy enough to pick up, but don't just shortcut it by thinking you can ask ChatGPT and then stick that in your suitability report as if it's fact. Don't do that.
Well, that's a great close to our conversation and great summary. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for tuning into the SIGA Network podcast. This show is produced by Jeffrey Benalisha. You can find more episodes on thesiganetwork.com/podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Until next time.